Well, welcome again to part 2 of private practice. I'm delighted that we've all gathered here again today to talk about some really important things. In a lot of ways, private practice is becoming, you could say, sort of the next phase of social work. And as you've seen in some of the videos, I go back to the beginning with our handy-dandy Encyclopedia of Canadian Social Work. So I'm going to begin reading a little bit about what it says in here about private practice. And it makes the important point of, I'm going to read this, private or independent practice is an autonomous form of social work self-employment, either wholly or in part, in which social work knowledge, skills, and values acquired through adequate education and experience are used to deliver professional services. It goes on in a long definition here in the story, it's got like 2 pages almost, to talk about over the past 2 decades, private practice has been the focus of much controversy in social work literature, with critics of private practice arguing that it jeopardizes social work's historic mandate, creates professional value conflicts, and promotes a 2-tiered system of services. So, one of the things I want to comment on today is that Shelley LeBreton, my colleague here, whom I've known for, 15 years or 150 years, we've been through a lot of experiences in witnessing together, a lot of disappointments and a lot of amazing bravado moments. So, we're going to do 2 videos today, just to warn you. Spoiler alert, that the first one we're going to talk about private practice and some of the wonderful services and resources that Shelley is able to provide in the community. And then in a subsequent video, we're going to talk about some ethical conflicts or awkward moments we've had during the complicated careers we've had in social work. So Shelley LeBreton has a private practice. My understanding of your historic professional resume is you've worked with the elderly, she's worked with youth, you've worked with street theater, you've worked with all kinds of different agencies that were oriented towards grassroots, the gritty basics of life, let's say. You've worked with the most struggling of struggling.
Lots of frontline.
Yeah,
lots of frontline
places
stuff.
Like New Hope or
New Hope,
the Women's Health
shelters.
Place, shelters. So I'm going to put the camera on Shelley, and she's going to talk about what she's doing now with her private practice, and then we're going to have a little bit of a dialogue of where the moments of wonder and amazement are, and the moments that hurt or are itchy.
Okay.
So, Shelley, and private practice. Talk to Steven Spielberg about what you do.
Okay. So I opened up a private business as a registered social worker called Innovative Social Work. I did bring some of my swag just to, kind of give you an idea that I take this very seriously, this private practice, because we're not just the social worker when you own your own businesses. So I pointed out in her previous conversation, we have to bring all of our skills to the table. So I am a marketer, I am a bookkeeper, I do social work practice in amongst that too. But I also have to do public awareness, and I have to promote my business in a way that creates confidence for whoever's hiring my skills. And I am the owner of the agency. I am the agency.
Mm-hmm. Beginning, middle, end, you're it.
Just like I am social work. It is an all-encompassing choice to make. And I liked your statements around how private practice does open up a lot of choice. Mm-hmm. That was one of the first things that stood out for me. So yes, I get to choose who I work for, who I bring on as a client group. I get to choose what specialty I work in. Mm-hmm. One of the things, I'm 57 years old, so doing this work from an early age, early as 20 years old. Mm-hmm. Actually, when I first think about it, my first experience with social work was as a candy striper. Mm-hmm. Okay. At 13 years old at a hospital. Yeah. And that's where I was first kind of exposed to seniors. Mm-hmm. And that work. So
I need to insert this here. She's also come from a heritage of gritty, rural working poor folk, where you have had family members who were involved with local politics and social justice activism. So she feels this stuff in her blood, her bones, her veins, her DNA. It's not stuff that she necessarily learned from a textbook or from a conference, but that she learned from her bloodline and her heritage.
Absolutely. I never went back to school. I didn't get my high school till I was 40 years old. Because I worked up north in the Fort Nelson, it's 9 hours north of here. I worked at a time where there was no competition for educated people, but we still needed to fill the spots, right? Those services still needed to be delivered. So people like me were given the opportunity to work without education. Then
like Bridget Moran, formal education, like Bridget Moran.
Exactly. So at 40, when I decided, I moved to Prince George, and the conversation around that was a university and a college here, so I could get that formal education. But that meant I was also competing with all the other grads over the course of the lifetime that those entities have been in Prince George. But anyway, I managed to get that. What I really appreciated about that is when I was learning theory in class, I had an example to attach to the theory. Whereas I seen with younger people, they really struggled with that part, you know, because they didn't have that. They didn't have that lived experience. And so in the long run, I appreciated getting my education later in life to a degree, because it changed things. It changed money. It changed the way I did my practice. Because I didn't know the nuances of ethics, and I wasn't aware of some of the therapies. I didn't have, like, one of the best books was 101 Ways of Counseling Techniques.
Oh, yes.
You know, I used to have a book called 101 Ways to Cook Hamburger. Kind of provided me the same foundation that I needed, you know. So I felt privileged that way. So what I've done with my business is I basically sell whatever skill I have developed over the last 30 years. And all my career has been in social work for the most part. However, I did own a convenience store one time. So I know how to do bookwork. I know how to do marketing, I know how to do sales. The other thing was when I went to open up my business the first time, I opened up a business in 2005 centered around social work, but I did not have my degree. And that was one thing I wanted to make clear. Like, you don't have to have the master's level in order to do some of the work. Most of the work doesn't happen if you have the you know, having to have that designation. When I listened to what you were saying about your business, opening up a therapeutic business because you have that designation, I do not. My social work business is more resource driven. So I'm offering a specific skill with specific resource resolution. I don't promote myself as a therapeutic counselor, although counseling is always a piece of social work. Always. And
empathy, warmth, concreteness, mirroring, being attuned and available emotionally, being conscious of how a person is shaped, all their past, their present, all the influences. That's always there. It's almost, once you've learned all that, or I'm going to be so bold as to say folks like you and me, when we were kids, we learned that.
The hard way.
We learned it the hard way, how to be attuned and available and alert to who was around us and what was going on. That those skills or just ways of being in the world, that no matter what you do in social work, that is the richness and the power, the superpower, and you're bringing that to your clients now. No matter, you can't turn that off. We've laughed to say, even if I'm on a bus, I'll look at people who are total strangers to me, and 10 minutes later they'll start telling me their whole life story. You know?
Totally.
Like, why are you telling me your whole life story? I'm just sitting on a bus. And I sometimes can't actually make it not be available to the people around me. It's just who I am now. It's not, oh, I'm going to put on my toolkit and bring out my pliers and my drill. It's just who I am. That
there's no glasses like Clark Kent where you're just like social worker.
Right. I'll be outside gardening and someone walks by and 20 minutes later I'm still standing there talking to them about their mother who died 2 years ago or something. I don't even know them.
I used to, you know, and that's happened to me my entire life. People can sense it's sensing those core personality pieces where they know you're kind, where they know that you are going to offer an empathetic ear. And it's weird sometimes. Somebody is really crying, and it happened up at Shoppers Drug Mart. A lady, putting magazines away. I had to buy a magazine for Greg. I believe it was his birthday, and so I asked her. And the next thing I know, this woman is she's crying, and she's telling me all this story stuff, right? And it's just not uncommon experience whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
One of my innovative social work, my motto for the business is navigating systems with kindness.
Yeah.
Because kindness is one thing that this world lacks deeply. And I can tell you that from all the different hats I've worn throughout my community work, I often will have the same client access me at a different agency because they need that wraparound service. Doesn't come in a one-stop shop very often.
Yeah.
So they have to make multiple agencies a part of their life as their healing or survival experience, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll have a client, like when I worked specifically with FASD and developmental delays with employment counseling. And then I'm now in a medical clinic working medical social work. And the person goes, "You! Wow!" Hugs, all that. And they don't know my name. They don't remember my name. But they remember how I made them feel. Mm-hmm. And so that is so rewarding for me. I can't even explain the kind of motivation that comes with that kind of a organic interaction, where they feel that, wow, there's somebody here I can trust.
Yeah,
And
legacy
trust.
work. It's like your life story, their life story somehow overlapped for a moment, and it was real, and it was strong, and it was truthful.
And kind.
And kind.
And kind.
Yeah.
So what does a social worker do? Our main role is literally helping people navigate systems. Whether you're in the medical system, navigating hospitals, long-term care facilities, other kind of medical supports that are community-based, or maybe your social work experience has you working in the shelter systems for the homeless people, shelter systems for abused people. There's lots of types of shelter systems. There's shelters that are specific to children.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know in Prince George, our Reconnect shelter houses about 700 homeless kids a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
700! Nobody, people just don't, they know of something, but they don't really want to delve into the deep, dirty grit stuff that can destroy you when you find out about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I say hats off to any social worker that has the courage to step up and to be a part of that, because you have to understand how this trauma becomes a lateral trauma, or is that the word I'm looking for, vicarious trauma, because you're watching what's happening to others around you.
Yes.
And so you can take that on over a long period of time, or something so dramatic happens that you're going to be impacted in a traumatic way. The conversation around self-care and professional development and the consistency in doing that is huge.
Yeah.
I will say that one of the biggest struggles for me as a private practitioner is being alone as a social worker.
Yeah.
So I go into an environment where I'm the only person that believes what I believe, that can kind of filter and understand problem solving the way that I've been taught and skill developed to do. And so what I have done to support myself to bring balance is I'm relying on my professional associations. So I became active in the BC Association of Social Work, became more active with the Canadian Association of Social Work. Of course, we're living in a pandemic. The mask is kind of obvious about that right now. But how do myself, as somebody with pre-existing conditions that need to protect myself, how do I continue to do my work? How do I stay motivated? How do I keep my head straight?
Inspired.
As I'm going through problem solving for other people, right? So I found that linking up with my professionals and the Zoom, embracing technology like you're embracing the videoing right now. Before, I would go to a classroom and have a presentation, and I would get that energy, and I would feel really good about, yes, I still know how to do this, or or
nutrition and affirmation for your soul and your intellect and your professional toolkit. So I just want, before you go further, I want to just list a few of the things so people can more fully follow what you're describing.
Okay.
So, and I think this is actually a profound statement about our whole profession that links back to what I was reading from that textbook, is that one of the things that you're helping people with is very specific project tasks, hoops. Let's say big hoops. So the hoop of helping people get on a disability pension, helping them get their Canada pension, helping them with their guaranteed income supplement, or to navigate through employee assistance programs, applications to prove they're seniors or they have a disability or so on. So I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit, almost like there are, I don't even know how to talk, like you get a bunch of crap in the mail from IKEA and there's 700 pieces in a box and you know you must assemble this, but you can't as a client, as a citizen. So you bring this box of crap to Shelley and you say, Shelley, can you take your social work tools and assemble this incredible 500-foot long bookshelf or something? Shelley says yes, and she can. So she brings all those skills. She also does advocacy and then looks through how to help with legal processes like your will and uncontested divorce, temporary decision-making process for maybe elderly people where there might be a mental health issue or a physical issue. So I think this is fascinating for our profession. And I'm going to hold that thought for a minute and I'm going to talk about when I was an immigrant settlement worker. So immigrant settlement work at one time, the way that would work, this is 35-ish years ago, a while ago, the way it would work is often to be an immigrant settlement place. And you had a photocopier and a desk and a receptionist and a coffee room and you had all the accoutrements. And then at some point, the funders decided to start paying per client contact.
Yes.
Per client per hour. So what happened was it shifted, I don't know if it's still like that, but I'm going to guess it often is in smaller communities. It shifted it to piecemeal. So that rather than coming to my immigrant settlement work, where I would work there from 9 to 5, where I would have a coffee with clients and their family and get to know my colleagues, each colleague, so if there was an immigrant settlement worker and there was an employment settlement helper and there was a family counselor person, we all were working out of our cars with our computer, with filling in little forms on a piece of board that we had, a clipboard in our office, our car. So what it has, I'm going to talk about some of the ugly downsizing from federal, provincial, municipal government here. What's happening is they're saying instead of having a whole office and all these resources and supports, we're going to put each worker so that you pay for your own car, your own computer, your own phone, your own printer, your own email, everything. And we're going to pay you piecemeal, per hour, per client. So the good news is that when you're doing private practice, you're kind of cutting through all the hoops. If you're going to be a private practitioner, you might as well be a private practitioner versus being owned by an agency where they tell you all this stuff. So in a way, this is a more pure and earnest form of social work right now. On the other hand, I'm always worried the government is getting out of their full responsibilities, right? So it's kind of, we are ambiguous sometimes as a collective profession. Because if your core belief, as I believe your core belief is, and as we've said in other videos and lots of conversations, is we wish the federal, provincial, municipal government, I'm a socialist. I'm going to just come right out and say it. There it is. Tell your mama and your papa that I wish for the government to help all of us, all the time, be the best people we could be and redistribute the resources of our nation. That's my dream. That's your dream. That's Carlene's dream. That's Tuba's dream, right? We dream that. But meanwhile, right here, right now on the ground, you have clients who are seniors who are maybe really vulnerable and have no family members to step up or loved persons. So you intervene and help them do one IKEA assembly of something.
Absolutely.
They pay you for that time or opportunity to get a mountain climbed. You climb the mountain with them. and then you shake their hand, and maybe 5 years later, you help them with something else, right?
That's right.
So that's, I think, because your private practice is different than what I was doing.
It is, and that doesn't encompass it all.
Right,
This is just a marketing card for
Right.
these particular
Right.
skill developments.
Right, but I think this is, obviously you're responding to a really, let's say, rampant need in the communities,
Yes.
right, all across Canada.
Absolutely.
And that rampant need has been created by, or partially created by, federal and provincial governments stepping away from their full responsibility.
I
And-
weighed heavy the conversation that you're bringing up about, whether or not private practice kind of goes against the grain of how social work industry actually operates. And I'd like to say that the feminist structural social work learning that I've done, where the basic tenet is to try and make shifts from within,
Yes.
okay? So how do I become part of, like, a familiar conversation? People, workers who choose to go work with Ministry of Children and Families. That system
It's
itself
within the
is,
beast. They're within the big
it's a
ugly
beast.
beast.
It's a beast. But to be that generous soul that wants to go in there and be that light in there and to make a difference from the inside, I have a great deal of respect for that.
Yeah.
But also what feminist teachings have also brought to me is that I understand what the glass ceiling is now. And I've adapted that to be more of a general, that's why my head's flat. That's why my head's flat.
Bang fucking bang bang!
You have to know your limitations and boundaries. I have been crushed as a social worker going in and identifying a problem within an agency and try to fix it. That's where this stuff, the ethics stuff, really gets challenged.
Yeah.
Because you think you're going to be that social control agent, not only for your client, but for service delivery. So how can we make this better?
Right.
But then you got to go up against a set of government bureaucracy rules that wants you to track down and write something. Every time you've worked 15 minutes, we want you to spend 5 minutes telling us what you did with that 15 minutes.
Right.
I've been there.
Yeah, and it's a lot
That
about
detail.
control and oppression of clients, sometimes written inside the beast. So sometimes the good, let's say on an optimistic day when I've had great coffee and I've slept enough and I'm around kind people, I'll think of it as an ecosystem. Like in any ecosystem, you have all different kinds of creatures. You have 1,000 different kinds of plants. You have different kinds of bacteria and so on, right? And so some social workers are inside the beast. Some are outside the beast. Some are beast stabbers, some are beast sneaker upper honors.
Some become the beast.
Some become the
Some
beast.
become the beast.
Exactly, and we're going to talk about that in a subsequent
ethics.
video about ethics.
Yeah.
But I think this is very useful what you're delivering here. And when I talked about the private practice, and Carlene's going to be a private practitioner when she finishes her master's in social work. I'm recruiting her. I'm bringing her over from psychology. The summer's not over yet. September 10th or something.
She's going to switch majors.
Yeah,
Is
she's
that
going
what
to
I'm
switch
hearing?
majors. Yeah. But the idea, I kind of like the idea of hold those thoughts, right? Go back to the ecosystem idea. This was one of my little rants when I was in private practice and subsequent to that too. All the time. All the time. Even, being honest, even really poor women, okay? Honestly. We can look around at the women we know, some of them who live practically like in a one-room dump, and they have to have a boyfriend help them, or a parent help pay for the one-room dump, right? They will still go and spend, and they put it on Facebook, so I'm not making it up, $100 to get these weird fingernail things, right? Or they'll spend $100 to get their hair colored, permed, braided, all kinds of. Or they'll spend $400 to go visit a boyfriend somewhere, right? Like, we're going for the weekend to Vancouver, and it's $1,000. And then I'm still pissed about this. I forgot how mad I was. I just felt my spine go, and I felt the hair, that. But then they will not go and spend $200 on therapy, right? They'll be,
Exactly.
they will go through their whole lifetime and not spend money to heal, grow, clarify things. And they'll say, yeah, my parents are both totally messed up. Yeah, everyone in my family is suicidal and addict troubles, but look at my beautiful nails. No, I couldn't go for counseling. And I think, well, You know what, sweetheart? Over the course of your lifetime, if you do your fingernails fancy and you do your hair fancy and you've got an $80 push-up bra, you know what? Getting counseling for that same money would so help you to change your life, make you taller, braver, maybe just 2 or 3 or 4 little problem-solving strategies that you could internalize and be a better person is going to give you so much more than your fingernails, which 3 days after you've put the fancy things on, you could maybe lose your fingernails, like opening a car door or something, right? Like, this is so transient, the nails or the hair or the nice shoes, whatever. I get it. We're all tricked into, that's what capitalism does, right? With retail therapy, right? But I've seen so many women, and because women have been mostly my kind of ecosystem that I'm involved in, and I'll think, what is it that you think therapy should be for free? Counseling should just appear in front of you. Why would you trust the federal and provincial municipal government, the fathers and the brothers and the uncles, to provide you with the counseling to make you a brave, feminist, courageous, the best you could possibly be, right? Like, it's a contradiction.
Someone that could challenge them.
It's a contradiction,
Right, yeah.
and it's upheld within our industry, right? So I often will be approached by an agency that has need. Well, this is the typical conversation, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But our client can't afford you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think of right there.
Yeah.
When someone says that to me, I see that client with the big nails, the big hair, the nice clothes, the push-up bra, and it's not even about women. Men, it's the same way.
Tattoos
whatever we're buying, whatever we're spending our money on, our system, and I would like to make that, the reason the person doesn't value that therapy, there is a reason. Capitalism needs a certain amount of disadvantaged people to work properly. Mm-hmm. It's not in the interest of the system to actually fix many of these people.
Yeah.
So what they've done now is they've created, social workers can be part of the systemic abuse of that client. And
we become co-opted. We become apparatus of the state. We become part of patriarchy capitalism. Why are they paying us, and why is it that in the ministry you get paid better than anywhere else in social work?
That's because they're not private practices. Because the one thing I enjoy about being a private practice person is I can charge more money for the same skills that somebody would pay me $20 an hour at an agency for. When I say I'm a registered private social worker, nobody questions my credentials. Nobody questions my as an individual.
Yeah.
Within the agency, that is not as recognized, and so I appreciate that about private practice. You also have to have the self-confidence to sell yourself in private practice. You have to believe your message. And
so you're not really selling. I just want to add there. You're not really selling yourself. You're selling your skills, your power, your knowledge, your effectiveness to solve a problem that someone has, or move a problem to a better place.
Absolutely, and I don't undervalue myself anymore. And I did that for a long time because I was soaking up that message while I was getting my employment in the generalized system. So understanding people's agendas, understanding your agency's agenda, and now I have my own. I have my own agenda that I can control. It's not been easy along the way. I have hardships, but I have my integrity, and I stand by my values, my ethics. I bought into the social work code of ethics. I bought into the training that came with being a social worker. I valued what I was hearing and applied it into my practice.
Yeah.
I don't tell people I'm selling myself. You're right, that was poorly phrased, but people aren't paying for my university degree.
No.
People are paying for the 30 years of skill development I've brought to the table.
And your courage.
My courage.
Your courage. It takes a lot of courage to be an independent person in this world and be authentic. It takes so much courage. it's almost beyond human potential sometimes to be our true selves in a world that is very distorted, very manipulative, very heteronormative, very racist, classist, sexist, homophobic, and hypocritical, that it lies about what it is, right? Where we've talked in a previous video where everybody is, it's on trend right now, like, indigenizing everything, indigenizing the university, indigenizing, and then you look around and it's all white people at the table and almost all white males, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that indigenizing thing where you're doing the pamphlets for the last 3, 4, 5, 8 years, how come?
A filter on Facebook isn't enough, my
Right,
guy.
yeah. How come, you've said all this and you keep doing these, little infomercials of how awesome you are, but I'm not seeing any Indigenous people in the room or on the hiring committee.
In the
or
decision-making roles.
in the boss locations. I don't know what just happened behind me, but I hope it was friendly. I hope it was friendly.
It was funny.
Marie just hopped up and tried to, well, she tried to land it, she didn't.
Oh, okay.
She just grabbed the whole bath mat and it came off with her.
Okay. So it's very, very difficult to remain courageous. And so, Shelley is one of those people, and that's why I value her so much, that tells the truth. Even speaks truth to power, and it almost makes me want to weep because it takes so much courage. And maybe in our lifetimes there'll be maybe 5 moments or 10 moments where you think, either I can, and I'll be blunt, y'all know I'm a blunt person, either I can shut the fuck up and go back to my desk and do as I'm told, or I can keep telling the truth. But if I know I keep telling the truth, I'm likely to be really punished for this. Either I'll come back to work and I'll discover my office has been moved to the basement behind the furnace where the toxic chemicals come out. That's where I'll be working from now on. Or my stuff will be in a cardboard box on the sidewalk. And I know Shelley is one of those people who has woken up and been prepared to take the tall truth moment. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
I walk the walk. I don't talk. I don't just talk the talk. I walk the walk. I'm glad that being a survivor of abuse, like every woman is, being able to take, I look back and I seen when I had to survive on a welfare wage, and I seen where I survived raising my kid on minimum wage. I seen where I survived the horrific abuse, physical, sexual abuses, right? I take that and I go, what the hell can an agency or some guy that spent 6 years in school for a lawyer instead of 4 years like I did, I love de-escalating a hierarchy that is looking down on me. I've actually switched the narrative totally to own the power, to be able to walk those situations.
In private practice, you're the boss, and then reminding ourselves, and it does take a moment or a decade to go back inside and say, hey, I've been raped, I've been beaten, and this guy's going to do a friggin' memo on a green sheet of paper? Really? You're going to put a memo in my file and you think I'm going to tremble? And then reminding ourselves, I'm not going to fucking tremble, right? And that's, you've had, and it's hard because you still want to pay your bills and you still want to have...
Well, and you get labeled. You're a bitch, you're difficult to work with, you're, whatever, controversial, whatever it is, you have to wear the badge with honor. And it's something that, again, feminist structural social work gave me the ability to see clearly the system, so that I started recognizing, this is my rights, these are my responsibilities, this is what I can change, this is what I can't. Here's the glass ceiling where, whether it's an agency I may be a part of, or even in my practice work, I'm not here to solve all those problems.
Right.
I'm here for a very specific, compartmentalized problem that's been presented.
Yeah.
Even though I may have the skills and ability to solve other things, you have to be able to recognize where your limits are, where your boundaries are.
With clients here, you can be truthful in private practice and say, you deserve better over here and I'm sorry. You deserve better over here and that's a racist structural situation or homophobic situation. I can't change that for you, my friend, my comrade, but I can help you do this right here and I will do it with courage, truthfulness, tenacity, and honesty. I will tell you exactly what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how long it's going to take me to do it, and so on. It's a clear exchange without the hypocrisy that some agencies are literally mandated to do.
Absolutely. Like for one thing, I'm open about my filing system with clients. This is the information I'm going to track on you.
Yeah.
This is the kind of note taking I'm going to do. When I'm at an agency that wants to hide those pieces of information from a client, I get challenged by it. That's a small example, but it is like, you know, if I was working with some people that had sexual abuse allegations within their family, and I had been, you know, taking really good case notes all along the way, and I let them know, I want you to know what I'm writing about you. I want you to know that when you leave here, this is what I'm going to document, and this is what I'm not going to document. Very specifically, like sexual abuse victims, for instance, they don't want you writing the little details. It's enough to know that you can say this person was raped, but they don't need to know, you know, and so, you know, case notes become very important, but it is an example of where I've seen agencies own those notes like they're like it's personal property kind of thing, right? And so it's one of the things that I know eases the mind and builds the trust in a relationship when you can provide that transparency. It's one of the things that when I work for an agency, I will interview about.
Yeah.
Because you, not only are they interviewing you for your skill development, you need to get power from the interview process, own it, and interview them at the same time.
Right.
You're sitting across a group of men sitting like this.
Yeah.
Don't make your interview polite and leave and don't go back.
Right.
You know, you need to assess how things and have power in that.
Right. So you're
stepping back from taking on personal blame for a system.
Okay.
I find that structural social work has helped me to analyze.
Yeah.
You know, what parts of
Malali
this works.
and Bishop, we love you.
Yes, Malali and Bishop,
Yeah.
basic where all that came from. You know, I also, you know, it helps me to step back from what I have control over, what I don't have control over. And, you know, you have to have your pride taken away at a certain point to be able to accept your limitations and your boundaries. But you know what does that? Personal self-therapy. You talked about that in private practice, that it's good to actually be the client.
Yeah.
And then and I think because I did all my therapeutic work in my 20s, when I have a client sitting in front of me that I know is going to engage in that same process, my level of empathy for that person is so huge and detectable in spirit, emotion, and comfort in the room, not necessarily me giving a big explanation about the 2 years I submerged into intensive rehabilitation therapy around sexual abuse.
They can feel it, they can intuit it. Their third eye sees your third eye. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same with racism. We work with high Indigenous populations, you know, and when a client comes in and I can tell right away that's an issue.
Yeah.
So right away I'm talking about, hey, I get that I'm whitey over here talking to you right now and you're mad about blah, 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 but let me tell you that I want to be your ally. Here is me offering, but I will only do it if you accept if you want that. Right? Another part of sort of like those aha moments along the way, meet a lot of people who are stuck in the poverty cycle of welfare, income assistance, and it's generational at times with some of the folks. And the amount of shame, the way clients come in and humble themselves with their heads down, just, I know if I just behave in this appointment I'll get my check.
Right.
That is heartbreaking for me. And the conversation about rights and responsibilities is a big ease. So I want you to know that it is your responsibility for A, B, C, and D, but it is not your fault that overall you're trapped in this system of poverty, and give them some conversation, because they often have never challenged the system themselves. They have, you know, wherever they're at in their world, and that's brought them into your particular office. You know, I really want to empower clients right away and let them not have simple things. I don't sit across from someone in the desk situation. I want them beside me.
Yeah.
You know, some of those are very basic first year things you learn in social work, right?
But then some people forget them. People forget them, and the minute the quiz is over, they go and return back to power over rather than power with, and they slip back to using all their little microaggressions and micro absences that, like, where it could have been better, the relationship could have been richer, better, one up, but they just didn't bother with that. They just absented that, you know, that's all you get. That's all you get. And of course, many people, it isn't just that they get this system. Once you get the idea of structural social work, it isn't an accident that some families, some people, some communities are 10 generations stuck in poverty. They're not stuck in poverty, they're nailed into it or cornered into it.
That's right.
It's what's there, and that's because somewhere else there are communities and families who are aggrandized falsely or affirmed falsely, who build their wealth and privilege on the deprivations of others.
Absolutely.
That's the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's empowering, it's overwhelming at times too, because you do have to realize your limitations within that. But when you're a social worker, you got to know who your client is. And if your client is a part of that system, then you are no help if you're just going to blame them as not being able to break from the system.
Could you tell me, so I'll head us towards concluding this part of our video today. Tell me a little bit about one or two moments or one or two clients where you at the end you're just like, yeah, that worked out really well. That was super cool. That was satisfying. Tell me some of these, let's say, projects or tasks that you help people with, where at the end of it you think, good, it's a good day today.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So, I think one of my favorite stories is, first of all, I had the luck of working for an agency that was Indigenous based and did service delivery different. One of the privileges of my private practice is I don't have to stay in a ticky box for no reason. Mm-hmm. If somebody needs to see me at 6 o'clock at night, I can do that. Mm-hmm. If somebody needs me to drive to them, I can do that. There's no restrictions around driving. Access.
Right.
At points of access, I can bypass all that. But I was doing medical social work, and I was working with a homeless person, and that person was going blind. So they were being robbed blind, let's say. They were also falling a lot and in hospital a lot. But this person was very addicted to alcohol, and then how can we create a plan to get cataract surgeries to somebody who's homeless, who's just an adorable, adorable person, but was living at such high risk. Because after a cataract surgery, you have to get drops in your eyes 4 times a day.
Okay.
But how do you do that when the person doesn't actually have a home? And you know, they may not be able to do it to themselves anyway, right?
Yeah.
So, as a worker, came up with a plan to, I actually was part of the financial supports for this person, and so we would give that person, I would hand that person their own money every day, because if they left with their money, they would be robbed.
Yeah.
So I created a plan that I would give $10. If you come back, right, you come in the morning, I'll give you $10. You come back at noon, I'll give you 10 more bucks. And this went on so that he got his treatments. I also...
So that was created with him, through dialogue, through respectful engagement, him realizing, oh, I got this vulnerability and you can help me, and you saying, hey, yes, I can help you and I will do exactly this. It kind of a contract, an emotional and pragmatic contract that gave him that empowerment that he could get this surgery and then get the drops so that the surgery had full impact.
Absolutely. I also had to involve other shelters, so I went and got eye drops, extra eye drops prescribed, and I had them at all the shelters, just you know, depending on where he would land.
Yeah.
And I even had one of his relatives carry a bottle, so if she ran into him, she would give him eye drops. All right, and now you know, finding somebody, you know, even prepping him for the actual surgery, so there would be no detox piece happening because you got to sit very still.
Yeah.
Well, it happened, and he did well and he has his eyesight now.
Yeah.
You
Wow.
know, so, and
That is a beautiful memory. That's a fortifying memory on a day when you feel sad that something isn't working out. You can pull that one back up and use it as nutrition and fortification to go on.
absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me a story in private practice that you've had where you've done one of these contracts or helped someone with their uncontested divorce forms, let's say, rather than it becoming an escalated drama. You help the couple find a good way to conclude some phase of their life. And
Uncontested divorces, they're already there.
Yeah.
I don't take on any contested divorces
Right.
because I'm not a legal advocate, but I can do forms.
Right.
So I help people fill out the forms, right? So definitely I've had a number, these are all great, intelligent people coming to me, but they may not have computer skills. Or I had a school teacher I helped one time with a divorce who just didn't want to put their headspace in those documents.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same with
A very profoundly facilitated conversation. I've been thinking lately, my husband was a professional writer, creative writer. He published 8 books. I'm a writer. I have a PhD. I teach qualitative writing, for example. I bugged him and bugged him and bugged him for about 10 years to write a will. And he kept saying, oh yeah, I'll get around to it, right? So at 74 years old, he died without a will. And here we are. So had I been able to say, Shelley, you need to come talk to Ken. Because I could only push it so far, right? So there's things in our families, in our lives, in our communities, that even people who do have someone who loves them, and even people who have profound skills and creative effectiveness in other domains of their life. I'm thinking, for example, when there's an elderly person and they have children who love them, you could be the person they call on to say, help us, help Grandpa write a will, help Grandpa give up his car keys, because maybe he's getting
That's a
all
big one.
wobbly.
That's
But
a big one.
a child, even a child who's 60 who has a dad who's 80, that's an impossible conversation sometimes. So a private practitioner could come in for 2 conversations about, Grandpa, you got to give up the keys, and Grandpa, you got to write a will.
Yeah.
That could be a fabulous muscular gift you give to that elderly man and to their kids, and
Absolutely.
getting it done.
Absolutely.
Right? With Ken and I, we never got it done. I know we talked about it. I don't know. Every time I'd watch a show and somebody would die, I'd be like, Ken? And he's like, I know. And then it never
And then it never
happened.
gets done.
It never, ever happened, right? Which is so ridiculous.
Well-
Who would predict it? But many times there are some conversations or some emotional places that only an outsider can bring up, right?
Absolutely. Often, if a family member connects with me, they're worried that them even connecting with me will create a problem.
Yeah.
And so I'm very creative at getting the conversation to happen organically and not focus. You don't open up the conversation, hey, I hear you need a will.
Because you're going to die any minute.
Because you're going to die. You're, blah, blah, blah. So, there's ways to, and that's all through your skill development and being a counselor, open-ended questions and all those simple kind of techniques. Eventually, you practice what you've learned to the point where it becomes who you are. I remember early on when I first went to school, someone said, stop using me as your client. And I'm like, I didn't realize I was doing it, but somebody picked up that was my new language. And
as we were saying-
it made me proud of that moment, even
Yeah,
though that
yeah.
person was upset
Exactly.
with me. I realized I'm
it becomes
getting there,
an art. It's the art of who we are, not, as we said in the beginning of this conversation, if you've really been doing your social work learning in a really deep way, it becomes who you are. It's not a kit you can put on and take off. It's
right.
just who you are. If you're standing at a bus stop, someone starts telling you their life story, or right, but the magic of a private practitioner is that you can be brought into a family. So this is for family counseling, let's say. You can be brought into a family to help with the will. Grandpa or grandma needs to move to an elder care home. So the family can bring you in and help put more beauty and goodness into their family through you bringing your art, your magic, your skills, and producing. Often, as we go through our life, we forget about all the documents. There's a lot of, the marriage certificate, the will, the cremation document, the Get Canada pension plan. There's moments in our life cycle where a document or a hoop has to be managed. And this is some of the stuff that you're offering to the world and to families. In a million ways is a bargain. If I had realized, call Shelley, Ken will get a will. Grandpa could
Don't
get
think I didn't ask her or talk to her about it either, because it was too. We had that conversation a couple of times just to suggest it, But I find that, bringing financial remedy to a person's life remedies more than the bank account. It takes
peace.
It brings peace, it takes stresses away.
Yeah.
And nobody's born with information about GST, GIS, OAS, CPP. Nobody's born, or representation agreement. There's a good example.
Okay.
A lot of families need a protective document, as with dementia, Alzheimer's. Sometimes a person is intact and functioning, high functioning, and the next day their disease, they couldn't give consent to the flavor of ice cream they wanted.
Right, they're foggy brain.
Foggy brain, there's, their ability to give consent is obviously not there. So families who've waited too long perhaps to do the decision making, they need to establish a power of attorney.
Yes.
But that person has to be able to give consent, because power of attorney is, I'm giving you the power to operate legally, attorney.
Yeah.
Operate legally my finances and or my medical decisions. So
Yeah.
power of attorney has two pieces. But it's also $380 minimum.
Yeah.
And if you're poor, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So the BC Association of Social Work, along with Don Hemingway, our beautiful Don Hemingway up at the university, they started a group called NIDUS. I can't tell you what, it all breaks down right now.
Okay.
But they have promoted a representation agreement that people can do for free. Okay. That there's some signatures that are needed, and you can then register that document as a legal document that you will be doing basically the same thing, power of attorney over, but you do it through a representation agreement. The first time I read the representation agreement, I just glossed right over. 25 pages of instructions for like 3 pages of work you actually got to fill out, right?
Yeah.
This is what happens. This is why people need people like me.
Mm-hmm.
I hired, for instance, a house insurance broker. Okay? First time I had a tenant do damage in a rental suite I owned, I found out that on page 26(5)(e), the violence insurance was on our property at home and not on my rental. And I'm like, well, you guys must have made a mistake, because why would I do that? But they made the statement about page 26(5)(e), and I said, your document is so complicated that we need to hire people like you to explain it to us. I said, so don't hang that on me that I didn't read page 26(5)(e). I can get really mad about stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, I am in an industry that, because things are so full of bureaucracy, and I have spent my time honing my skills to navigate that.
Yeah.
That's what they're paying for.
Yeah.
Because we're not born with information
Right.
about representation agreements or
Right.
power of attorneys
Right.
or
Right.
any of these systems, whether
Yeah.
you're in the welfare system or the medical system or the child welfare system,
So
nobody's
being
born
an
with it.
advocate in lots and lots of ways, really wholesome, powerful ways. So as we wrap up this video on private practice and these specific kind of chunks, because this is quite different from what I was doing. And there's
Yes.
probably other private practitioners who do stuff that's, again, quite different. And that's one of the marvels of private practice, is that each of us can kind of look at our whole wealth package that we've accumulated through our whole life cycle, and who we are and who we are perceived to be and all of that, and say, okay, these 5 things I could offer to the world in a good way, or these 3 things. And you've found those things.
Yes.
You're out there letting the world know that you're available to offer these kinds of things. Innovative social work. And maybe are there 1 or 2 more things you want to make sure you say, in case anyone's thinking, this is a course on family social work, in case anyone's thinking of hiring someone like you, or in case someone's considering becoming someone like you, are there 1 or 2 more things you'd want to make sure that they think about?
I think the biggest piece is having the self-confidence and having motivation.
Okay.
Because you are responsible for your own client development. And I think you have to have confidence or nobody's going to buy your product.
Right.
And so, yeah, and I do hear it from people, within the industry, and maybe for a while you do have to, if you're young and new out of school, or even if you're older and new out of school and you don't have that experience, then I can see where you might not, feel as confident going forward. But what I'd like to say is to build that confidence during the schooling pieces as well.
Right. Okay.
Right? Because the school is what, it was backwards for me because I didn't get education until I was later in life. But it was, when someone says to me, what was the main thing that brought you out of your abuse and your life of abuse? I'll say it's education.
Okay.
Education gave me power.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me the ability to put blame here, my rights, my responsibilities, and once I got that figured out, then I could move forward with strength. I think for all of the people reading, watching this video, it's about school. Sometimes we get bored in lectures. Sometimes we get bored at school. We don't want to read a whole book on ethics. And it's one of my biggest examples. I was just like rolling my eyes when I first thought I had to take the ethics course, and it's now what drives me.
Okay.
It is, I have now been able to take the theory, put it into my practice, and understand the validity of what I was learning.
Right.
So I would hope people to keep an open mind on their learning environments, whether that be at the work site or in your actual educational environment.
So,
right?
so be really clear about who you are,
Mhm.
what your values are, what you know.
Mhm.
What you know is what you know, so you bring that to the world.
That's right.
And also, there's informal education that is your power. There's formal education that is your power. And as you go through the whole life cycle, know that that is glistening gold. That is something that you can offer to clients, that you can offer to your agencies or your community. Be proud of it and be aware of the marvel of it and the danger of it, right? Like that's part of why they want to put us in the basement or out on the street. It's like, you know too much. You're difficult and you know too much.
Absolutely.
So Shelley is out there taking her knowledge and others like her and bringing it to good ways and good places.
I was gonna have a question.
Sure.
So do you find then that as you're working, and not necessarily against those structures, but with those structures in a way that puts you at that glass ceiling, do you find then that your credentials become more in question the higher you go?
No.
No?
Because you know exactly what you know, right?
It is because of that, exactly. Like if there's lots of power over in our social work structures, and you have to get control of that yourself. You have to recognize what you can or cannot control, and I just refuse anymore. And a lot of that was my personal healing. I'm not letting anybody abuse me. I know this feels. Sometimes you get the intuition, you get the gut feeling, and maybe you can't label it right away.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to go away and reflect on it and then come back. With private practice, though, it rarely happens to me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely. Nobody says, "Oh, I've never had anybody ask me to show me the degree."
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say an agency. I feel like that's probably a thing where if you're opposing it, then those credentials and things that maintain elitism might come into question as a justifying way to
I can tell you,
compare you to your peers.
I've been walked out of the door. Get out. And I'm like, see you later.
Yeah.
I have been fired.
Yeah.
And now I wear it as a badge of honor because I would rather be fired than be associated with that kind of service delivery.
Yeah.
And if I've identified a problem that's oppressing a client, it doesn't go away because a manager won't talk to me about it. That still is the reality of that client's life, and it's still the reality of the box I have to stay within.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm at an interview, ethics always comes up in an interview. So I'll make my, and it's where I use the opportunity to discuss how I'm going to view the agency or the person.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about ethics? It's one thing to say they celebrate me because I'm well versed in them and I'm trained. I can write. Last one of my contracts, I wrote an ethics manual. But when I actually have an ethics call, when I say, hey, I think this is infringing on a Bill of Rights for somebody, let's say, yeah, that gets it gets difficult to handle, but you have to master the language as well.
And
right?
know what you're there for. So this is kind of one of the marvels of this is, so let's say, I'm thinking of situations I've had in my life where, let's say I'm here to help this person with A, B, C, and the mansplainer person is saying, yeah, but you're a feminist. Okay, maybe yes, maybe no. But I'm here to help this person with A, B, C. And then they say, well, you vote socialist. It's like, yes, this could be true or not true, but I'm here to help Carlene with A, B, C. And they start, their voice gets louder. Well, I'm going to do a green memo on you about your vegetarianism. Okay, but I'm here to help Carlene with A, B, C. That's often, right, if I say I'm here to help Carlene with A, B, C, possibly I am a bitch, but Carlene needs help with A, B, C. That's the way often big organizations or mansplainers or racist, sexist, classist, homophobic, you know, they bring up other things to distract, to diffuse, to detour, to make you feel ashamed or stigmatized or a whole bunch of other sort of bullshit. And that's what I think you're very good at, and that's a boundary thing. But in private practice, that can be one of our gifts is, perhaps you can send a memo, you're welcome to. But A, B, C, and Carlene, you can just keep coming back to, why am I here? All the universe, maybe my cat box needs to be changed at home, it's smelly. But Carlene, you just, right? So that makes you strong when you know exactly why you're there, and that's that.
And even though I'm doing private practice, I'm still hired by agencies. I'm not just hired by individuals. Individuals, that's not so much part of it, right? I'm telling them how to advocate for themselves within another system.
Right.
When I'm hired by an agency or a nonprofit of some sort, then that kind of stuff can come in. Because if I start identifying where the system that's paying me is interfering with this person, like an example, I worked doing employment counseling many years ago, and the government had a shift in the way they were doing their funding. And so I was hired to do employment counseling. And then about 6 months into it, when the government shifted, any client who was receiving income assistance or welfare benefits, like actual money every month, they had to come to our office for so many appointments. And if they missed the appointments, we had to report, and we knew they weren't going to get their checks. That became a huge burden for me as a worker. So, and for instance, another example from that same, it's all shut down now, so I won't say the agency, but another example is I was hired because I'm trained in FASD. I can work with people with developmental delays really well. I was told I'm not allowed to phone and remind a person with FASD about because we're not babysitters. And it's up to themselves, and they have their own responsibilities. So you can bet all us workers were using our lunch to phone the clients that we knew wouldn't be able to get there without a reminder.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. It gets that freaking bad out there.
Throw a textbook at them.
Yeah.
I just told them fuck off eventually. It got quiet, right? Because that's exactly there. Just because
Goal score, yeah. Okay. C19 baby. I'm sorry.
It's so easy
I
to
just
do,
did
right?
a bad thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you wouldn't believe the way that, like, we were giving out, making people come for workshops every day from 9 o'clock till 4 o'clock, say, a full day of workshops, which is exhausting. You've all been there. We all know what that's like. But and they're on income assistance, but with the funding for the employment counseling, they could get $25 gift card for food to come to the workshops.
Yeah.
Right? Because what are they going to do? But I had one manager, I set it up, the course starts Monday, so the person was coming Friday to get their $25 card to buy their lunches for the week. You figure out 5 lunches for $25 anywhere. This what may have been 10 years ago, but still couldn't do it 10 years ago. And that manager held up that $25 card to me and says, I don't want to give it to them. I know they're going to spend this over the weekend. And I'm just like, give me the card. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. This is how I handled it. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I will let the client know, and I'll let them know they can come in here Monday morning to get the card and then run to the grocery store and be back here for 9 a.m. when we don't open at 8:30. Is that how you want this to go?
Yeah.
Fuck. I couldn't believe it. Patriarchy, right there.
Control.
Them thinking they know
Micromanaging.
how to manage $25 better than the client knows how to manage their $25.
Yeah.
My opinion, if that client needed to spend $25 on food on the weekend, or whatever they were going to spend it
None of
on,
your
it's
business.
none of my business.
Yeah.
They've been given the service, they proved their qualification, like they have to, the criteria to qualify
Yeah.
has been met.
Yeah.
Stop it. If
Yeah.
you're holding this back because you know they drank on the side or something, it's none of your business.
Right.
You
So
know,
in our
like
next
judgments.
video, we're going to talk about ethical moments in our careers where we either learn to lie or manipulate or do something or
Creatively.
get fired or quit or all of the above. So so stay tuned.
Stay
And
tuned.
thank you for Steven Spielberg's participation in this. Tuba, we love you. And thank you, Shelley LeBreton from Innovative Social Work. And thank you, Carlene, for being our conversationalist. And thank you for attending another one of our videos on family counseling.